You are with Wade, and this is Wade World. Today, we're going to be talking about a lot of fun things that are happening, especially if you're American. So pay attention. If you've been looking at the news, you know there's a lot of stuff going on. Now, if you are someone who lives somewhat of a normal life, most of the stuff going on is good for you. On the other hand, if you spend your days going to university, taking out student loans, smoking weed, and basically doing nothing except getting outraged over everything you see on Instagram, this is a pretty terrible time for you. So if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. But for the first time in 60 years, or we could go back even further, for the first time in about 111 years, we've actually got people who care about the United States in charge of the United States at a very interesting level, not just at the top level, but at the level that matters. Now, how did we get here? We're going to go through three things today. What is bureaucracy? What is judiciary? And who made us the world police, in no particular order. But how we got here is, if you go back to 2016, hey, I was definitely disinterested in all this stuff. Just like you guys, partying, having fun, doing what I needed to do to get where I needed. But something triggered my interest in all of this stuff, and that was the absolute vitriol that the media heaped upon somebody running for president. Fascinating. Never cared before it. It was just instinctive that whether you're on the right or the left, the person getting elected doesn't really matter because the policies don't change. Now, I don't know what you guys were doing 8 years ago, but I don't think most people in my age group are doing anything more than partying, drinking, smoking weed, and going to classes, right? But that caught my attention. And I watched with skepticism as the election panned out, and we had a new president who had a very, very interesting way of looking at things. But here's where the skepticism remained, in that the States is full of people who talk, but they don't do. So, was this a talker or a doer? 2016 came and went, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. And it turned out, for appearances, that this guy was a talker, not a doer. Whatever he tried to do got stymied by people that he didn't understand or he couldn't fight. And then 2020 happened. Let's just call it a cluster fudge of gigantic planned proportions, and he was kicked out. You might think the election was unfair, there was something dodgy about it. You might think there wasn't, but for all intents and purposes, the man who said he'd change things was kicked out. 4 more years passed. Apparently, the people who had been trying to make the states worse accelerated everything that was making it worse. If you live in California, New York, Miami, Denver, any of Minnesota, Chicago, any of these places, Austin maybe, even some parts of Arizona, you might have seen it. Streets are unsafe. Walking out at night is unsafe. Crime is out of control. People are just breaking laws, and the people following laws are being punished, right? And then 2024 happened, and turns out the dude hasn't given up the fight, and he's back. Fought. They were trying to assassinate him twice that we know of. One, and this time, he's actually surrounded himself with people who do what needs to be done. Right, for most of you, you'll either vehemently agree or vehemently disagree. But the thing is, you don't understand. So here's a short lesson in the simplest way possible for you guys on what's going on. So, if any of you are fans of South Park made a very funny movie called Team America World Police. If you've seen that movie, it's vulgar, it's funny, and it has a lot of stereotypes. Like South Park does, unless most of the time they're pretty middle of the road. They make fun of both the right and the left, which doesn't really make a difference now. So they came up with a movie called Team America World Police. And this was about America going around, bombing some Middle Eastern country, doing this, doing that, whatever. But if you've seen that movie, now is the time to ask yourself, why are we the world police? So a little bit of a history lesson. In 1492, Christopher Columbus discovered America. Over the next 500 years, people from mostly the United Kingdom, Germany, Scandinavia, parts of Europe came and literally took this continent, which was not developed. Let's be honest, it wasn't developed. There was a bunches of tribes running around, smoking weed, getting high, and, declaring war on each other. But they didn't really do anything with it. Fine. All these people came over the next 500 years, built this continent into a nation, built infrastructure, built technology, invited the greatest and best from everywhere to be a part of the United States. And the US was doing pretty well up until 1893. Had to fight a war against the British Empire, won that. Had a civil war, didn't go anywhere. The country stayed united. We can definitely see both ends of the argument, both from the Unionists and the Confederacy, on why they thought they were right. But moving on. What started changing in 1893 and before was, if you know your American history, we've had 4 assassinations of American presidents, starting with Abraham Lincoln, James Garfield, William McKinley, and then JFK. So William McKinley, James Garfield, and Abraham Lincoln all were assassinated before the start of the 20th century. This was the time America was doing great. The economy was great. People were happy. Everybody had land, family, food, doing well. Not really dependent on exports and imports, self-sufficient, just living a good life. World War I happened, and before World War I, something pivotal happened that we're not going to talk about today, because if you know what happened, you're ahead of the curve, so you know what'll come. But before World War I happened, America lost its biggest pillar of independence. That directly led to the administration participating in World War I initially, and then participating in World War II. Now, a little bit of a homework for you guys. In World War II, there were 2 factions of Americans, ones who did not want to participate in the war and ones who did. Huey Long was the champion of the participants of the side that did not want America to intervene. They were like, this is a war half a world away. We have nothing to do with it. We don't want to intervene. Let them sort it out. Which had been pretty fruitful for about 400 years for America. So that guy, Huey Long, got assassinated. You'll be seeing a pattern of assassinations pretty much throughout Americans' history. After Huey Long got assassinated, America joined the global war effort, blah, blah, blah. History written by the victors. America won, and then instead of withdrawing back and building up the nation, apparently American policy became to intervene in global conflicts, station troops everywhere else, and literally become the world police. So why is America the world police? If we go back again to where this started, we can go back to World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, whatnot. But this really accelerated after JFK, John F. Kennedy, was assassinated, and his brother, Robert Kennedy, was assassinated. Then America became really interventionists. Did you vote for this? Well, you probably weren't even alive. But if you were alive, did you vote for this? Did your parents? Did your grandparents? Who voted to be the world police? Would you like to be the hall monitor for the entire world? Is that a thankful job or a thankless job? Do you even know the logistics of being the world police? This is not free. This money is not coming from the gods or the sky. This money is coming from the government. And in case you didn't know, the government doesn't have any money. It collects it from you via income tax, which didn't exist before 1913, by the way, unless it was a time of war. So anyway, we became the world police, which meant we put a bunch of military bases all around the world, and we started telling countries what to think and what to do. I didn't vote for this. I don't agree with it. And I believe every country has its own culture. Every country has its own people and their own way of thinking. Sure, there are commonalities. We all like good food. We all like good drink. We all have families and we're happy. But There are fundamental and basic differences in how we run our nations. That is the reason there are nations, not blocks. That's the reason we have Belgium, Netherlands, Deutschland, France, Italy, Switzerland, all of these nations in a small area, because these people fundamentally disagreed on how to run their nations. So we became world police, not by your choice, not by your parents' choice, not by their parents' choice. Nobody voted for it. Nobody was asked for it. So how did we become the world police? Who made it? We'll answer that in the next thing we're going to discuss. But the second thing that might be a reasonable thing to ask was, all right, I didn't vote for it. I didn't think about it. My parents didn't think about it. They didn't vote for it. Their parents didn't vote for it. But how does it benefit us? I'll tell you something. I haven't seen a dime or any quality of life improvements from us being the world police. Maybe the people working for the federal government, all 2 million of them. Wow, great job. Read about a guy who smoked weed all day during the lockdown because he was a federal employee getting paid $8,000 a month. Great job if you can get it. But personally, the average American, we've had to scrape by, or if you're well-to-do, you still had to work to make your life a success. So the net benefits as an American, to me, being the world police is a big fat zero before it could even go negative. Like there's literally not been a single situation in my life, and I'm not going to localize the generalization. But all right, in your life, have you ever gone to a foreign country and you disagreed with something and you were like, no, stop, don't do that. I'm American. I'm pretty sure you didn't, because if you did, you'd get a smack in the face and you'll be told to shut up. So I don't know who's the world police in the States, but most Americans are not. Great. So what are the benefits to us? I don't know. I can't see any. What are the benefits to very, very wealthy people? This is an interesting question. If you're an American and you've read a lot of media, which is interesting if you did. But if you have, or you watch TV or YouTube or any of the New York Times political blogs on the left, on the right, you'll hear this word called oligarchs. I have never heard of this word before getting interested in all this stuff. But you keep hearing this word, oligarch, oligarch, oligarch. What is an oligarch? Oligarch is just a term for a very wealthy person who's powerful. Makes sense. With wealth comes importance. With importance comes influence. With influence comes power. Great. I don't know about you and me, but making America the world police means having America be influential at a very high level. And I can see a lot of these people benefiting from it. Whether we have multinational companies, we've got any number of them. Take your pick. IT, energy, transportation, we're basically at the top. So maybe being the world police helped them, because it sure as hell didn't help me. So benefits to the people, zero, probably negative. Benefits to these guys, probably infinity. So third and final point on this point is, how representative are these guys of Americans? I don't know about you, but I never felt that Amazon CEOs or Microsoft CEOs or even Google CEOs represented me. I don't know who they're representing, man. Maybe they're representing some of you, but I don't remember them ever election campaigning. I don't remember them ever asking the opinions of others and their agreements before they intervened via their soft or hard power in other countries, before they instigated media to put out hit pieces or just apply soft sanctions by declining service to certain places. None of this was asked to anybody. Like, no one has ever had a referendum in the United States. Should our energy companies sanction this country? We weren't asked. So this seems like being the world police doesn't really benefit the people who are paying for it. It does benefit the people who are making money off you. So if we didn't elect people who instituted a world police and we didn't vote for a world police and nobody asked us about the world police, how did it come to be? Well, here's where we talk about bureaucracy. What is it? Big words, right? Well, honestly speaking, most of you need to improve your vocabulary. If big words scare you, guess what? Your opinion on these matters doesn't really matter. Bureaucracy is how you get your country to run by following the orders of the elected leaders of the government. So these are people who are not elected, pass an exam, they apply for a job, they're selected, and they're in charge of running the country. So for example, if the president says, I want all buildings that are more than 100 stories to be colored bright yellow throughout the United States. This is my order. There has to be a bunch of people throughout the nation who carry out this order. They don't stand for election, they just select it. Now, a commonsensical man would think, you know what? Once all the buildings are painted yellow, their job is done. Goodbye and thank you for your service, right? No. In the history of government, this has never happened. And if it has, please feel free to enlighten me. These people are selected, not elected. But you know what's funny? They keep their jobs long after the elected people are gone. How fascinating is that? Imagine, if you will, that I make you the captain of a sports team for 4 years. You're the captain of the sports team. You can select everybody on the team. You can choose who to play with, who not to play with. You can choose how much money to spend on training, marketing, all that good stuff, right? And after 4 years, we say, bye-bye. We're going to get a completely new guy to be the captain. But everybody that you selected, they're going to keep playing. All the money that you made for the team is going to go to these people. And the captains may come and go, but these guys, they're going to play for 50, 60, 70 years. Even when they're old, even when they're unfit. And a lot of these players, you didn't even select them. They just came with the team. Would that team win any matches? What would you think about a team where they change the captain every 4 years just because? And of course, you can argue about term limits all you want, but this is an analogy. And most of the players didn't earn their way on the team. They just kind of hung on. And now they're told that they are going to be running the team. The captain might come and go. So what's their attitude going to be like? If the captain is replaceable, but they are not, who's really more important? The captain or the team players? Even if the team players are much less able than the captain. Got that? Great. In this example, there is one important distinction. Everybody watching the matches elects the captain, but they don't select the team. And the captain is given a little bit, not a lot, a little bit of leeway to select the team. How does this matter to what's going on right now? Because in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, these people were still in charge of implementing the orders of the captain. So the team was all these 80-year-old people, or 60 or 40 or 20, whatever. They know they're not going anywhere. The captain's coming in with his gung-ho attitude, but they're like, you know what? We don't care. We'll see you later, buddy. If the captain said, go right, they kind of slow walked it until the time ran out. That's literally what happened. What you're seeing now is the captain said, you know what? I am the captain and I can fire you guys. I do have the power. Everybody keeps telling me I don't, but I do. So he's firing the team and putting together a new team made up of players who are actually elected by the people or who actually have the credentials to perform. Whether they will stay on in service for longer is a discussion for another time. So the bureaucracy are bunch of selected people, not elected people, who are useful for running the government, but they have longer tenures than people who are elected. That system seems ripe for abuse, not because people are good or bad, because people are people. Given a little bit of authority, most people abuse it. This is a way of life. And what's worse is some of these selected guys are also selected by unelected selectors. That's the disease. Now you're not even got an elected guy selecting them. Now you've got selected people, unelected, selecting other people. Absolute chaos, absolute mayhem. Why are we the world police? I don't know. You don't know. These guys know. Great. That's the world we live in now, right? Everything that is happening now, and we're going to go into this in more detail next time. We're going to take a bunch of news headlines from esteemed news organizations, going to name them next time, that tell you what to think, but they don't really tell you what's going on. Because to tell you what's going on would risk angering you. And it has taken 60 years to anger people so much that they got fed up and voted so massively that it was hard to commit fraud in 2024. Let's just call it like it is. These people tell you what to think, and we'll go into this in more detail. They accuse you of doing what they're doing. Thirdly, and most importantly, they invert words. So if a few of you, I'm not even going to assume most of you have read George Orwell's 1984, and a lot of you who read it have no bloody idea what he was talking about. A lot of you are people who are not nationalists, people who have no idea what it means to be a nation. You just read the book and you react emotionally to it because you lack the intellectual capacity to understand what he was saying. In George Orwell's 1984, he says, for the party, truth was lies, lies was truth. War was peace, peace was war. This is literally how the world is being run right now. If you're scared, because if you're not a nationalist, right, and you're freaked out and all your media is freaking you out every day, it's because you literally are a prole. A prole in 1984. George Orwell describes them as the people who are the most susceptible to propaganda because all sorts of propaganda just passes through them like a seed passes through a bird. It has no effect on them. They lack the thinking, the brain power to actually analyze what they believe in. So if you're just reacting and you've been reacting like that, you're a prole. Exception if you're young, if you are a man below the age of 35, because men take a lot longer to mature. And if you're a college student, you don't have enough life experience. I've been a university student. I've gone through the whole thing. I thought I knew everything. Until the rubber hits the road, until you go out and apply in the world what you think is reality, you're never going to understand reality. It's quite nice to have ideas in your safe space, in your bubble of intellectual thought. But if you think that, for example, Hollywood loves to show this, if you think that a 95-pound, 5'5" girl can beat up a 260-pound, 6'4" dude, probably on a lot of pro-hormones and steroids, by jumping around, you've got the intellectual capacity of a child that thinks it can jump off a building and fly like Superman. That's who you are. If you're 35 and you think that, damn man, you're a loser. If you're 25, you think that, you're on your way to being a loser. If you're 15, you think that, I let it go because you're 15. But if you're still with me, let's move on to the final chapter this time. The judiciary. We hear this phrase a lot, checks and balances. What are checks and balances? So in the United States, and in other governments as well, again, if you understand English, it's the lingua franca of the world. Ironic, it's not French. If you understand English, you might have a separate government, but unless you're an absolute monarchy, which has actual power, Saudi Arabia comes to mind, Brunei comes to mind. You hear this a lot, checks and balances. So you have the elected executive branch, which is the president and the bureaucracy, the Congress and Senate in the United States we have, whatever you guys have, the upper house, lower house of government, and the courts, the judiciary. If you're in the European Union, you have a bunch of unelected bureaucrats, I believe, in the European Commission. The EU is fascinating. If someone wanted no one to know who is running a continent, they would build it exactly like the EU. They have 15 different bodies. All of them have equal power, and half of them are made up of people that nobody knows, nobody elected, nobody even understood where they came from. Boom, they're the boss one day. So, who are the judiciary? So the judiciary are people, lawyers, judges, have to pass a bar exam, they get into practice, and then they're made judges selected by not me, not you, not your family, not your dad, not your mom, not your grandparents. Even your dog doesn't have a vote on it. I don't know who these judges are. I just don't. I don't even know the selection process. Someone can enlighten me. But it sure doesn't seem fair that in the United States, we have federal judges that no one elected, that were selected in races that could be bought by legal bribery, which is lobbying. You throw enough money to somebody who wants to be a judge against their opponent, and your guy wins. That doesn't really seem like a fair way to select someone who has the power of life and death or other serious things on you, does it? No test of character, no test of ability, no test of principles, just a trust me bro level of selection. That's the judiciary. That's hilarious. To remove a bureaucrat is hard. To remove a judge is almost impossible. It seems that these checks and balances have a very interesting balance of power. That the person that is elected can be removed pretty quickly, but the people who are selected and not elected, they cannot be removed at all, or it's extremely hard to remove them. That doesn't sound like anything of a republic or a democracy to me. That just sounds like a glorified bureaucracy. If it's more difficult to remove the people who weren't elected, if it is more difficult to remove the people who you didn't have a say in than it is to remove someone you voted for, that is a problem. That is just a commonsensical problem. It just is. If we take it all the way back, right? Imagine you had a vote for class president. Class president, the guy who's going to be president of the class, whatever, has some little bit of authority. So somebody became the class president because a majority of you voted for them, fine and dandy. Now imagine there were roles of 10 assistant vice presidents, but you don't vote for them. Nobody that you know in your class knows who these people are, but they are there. And the class president has to go to these guys to get the work done. However, if any of these 10 people come up to you and slap you in the face, there is no way for you to get rid of them. Like zero. Literally no way. The requirements are so tough, it's insanely hard. So all of these 10 people have actual power and authority over you, and they can really mess up your life. But you didn't know them, you didn't vote for them, you didn't select them, you didn't elect them, you didn't do anything about them. They just there. However, if your class president looks slightly awkwardly towards a butterfly, bam, gone. That's the guy you selected. That's the guy you elected. And he can be kicked out so easily. Fascinating. Doesn't sound like a fair representation to me. How does this tie in with the world police concept? We'll come to that. Another important point that the bureaucrats and the judiciary share is that their tenure is longer than the elected representative. Bureaucrats and judges don't have to worry about elections. They don't have to worry about being fired, because I just said it's almost impossible to fire them. They don't really have to worry about anything. And what's worse is your presidents come and go 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. Maybe they get 2 terms, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years. But these guys stay in government for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. If you've been paying attention to what is happening with the U.S. government's different arms like USAID, the Department of Education, the Department of Social Security recently, so on and so forth, you'll see a lot of these headlines. Career diplomat resigns. 40-year-old guy resigns out of a protest. None of these guys are resigning due to protests. These people have zero incentive to rock the boat. They have zero incentive to take risks. They're not fighting for your vote. All they have to do is do what they're told, and they get a lifelong paycheck even after they retire. They don't have to be anybody special to reach the top job in their agency. They just have to be. Their entire existence depends on not rocking the boat. You know who doesn't want to rock the boat? Women and children. And most men who do not have leadership capabilities. These are the people that you don't want having power and authority over you because they are not leaders. They do not have the qualities necessary to do what is the right thing, even if it is difficult, even if it is dangerous. A lot of these people, if you shoot near them, they'll pass out, probably poop themselves. Forget trying to get assassinated. 60 years, the bureaucrats in the judiciary, lifelong tenure. Nobody elected them, nobody voted for them, but they've got decades of power over you and you can't do anything about it. They do not represent the will of the people, and their tenure is lifelong. And your elected representatives represent the will of their people, and their tenure is very short. So now, if you have had the patience to sit through this explanation of the bureaucracy, of the judiciary, of the executive branch, elected, unelected, selected, and you have understood that the elected people come and go, but the selected and unelected people stay forever, can you answer the simple question, who made America the world police? Yeah? Did you get it? Good. If you got the right answer, we will continue. If you got the wrong answer, no one can help you, at least not at this time. Now let's extrapolate this. To give specific examples might come at another time, but we're going to extrapolate this away from the United States of America. If you are a Canadian, if you are an Australian, if you are a British subject, if you are a European or a Scandinavian, if you are in any nation in the world that follows this type of government, it will become increasingly clear to you who really runs your country. Secondly, if your elected officials are under constant attacks by the legacy media, which is rightfully dying, it's not the media, guys, it's propaganda. It's pretty much been propaganda since it started. So basically 124 years of propaganda. Yeah, this isn't really media. These people aren't journalists. They're puppets that jump when someone tells them how and ask how high for how much money. So if your legacy media hates your elected people, they're probably doing something right. Because the legacy media is a bunch of misfits. They don't really create anything. They don't really produce anything. They don't even have any principles. They just say what is required for an X amount of money. So basically, they're not teachers, they're not firefighters, they're not doctors, engineers, architects. They're not in the armed forces, no Army, Navy, Air Force. They're not even risking their life to run for the government. They're just people who sit in front of a camera and talk to you. Unfortunately, they don't have a message. That's the worst part. I'm sitting in front of a camera and talking to you, but I have a message. I'm trying to give you this knowledge. I'm trying to increase your awareness. These people have zero motivation except for money. They have no God except money. So if your leaders are being vilified by the legacy media, that means they're doing something right. Number two, a lot of the policies in your countries, and these are the countries that I mentioned specifically, if they don't make sense, right? Like if you go out for grocery shopping and every single year, without an active war going on, things are becoming more expensive, but your wages are not rising. Like eggs are becoming more expensive, but you didn't get a raise to compensate for that. These are not the policies that are the result of the people you elected. If the people you elected are not doing anything, they're just puppets. They have nothing in their head. They have no power. They became a puppet to be elected so that you can look at them and say, hey, that's my president or that's my prime minister. The people who you really have a problem with are bureaucrats. How many of them are there? You'll have to find out, but there is a lot. And they have access to information about you that you do not know. They know everything about you and they can ruin your life. Scary, isn't it? Say something wrong and the UK will throw you in jail for a tweet. Orwellian. Say something inflammatory and the EU, many countries in the EU will arrest you. Just saying something. Not even offensive. Just common sense 20 years ago would bring you here. And again, who exported this? Who was the engine for the export of this? Unfortunately, Team America, World Police. Now, I don't know about you, but I personally have zero interest in telling the French or the Italians or the Croatians how to live their life. I have zero interest in it. I live in California. I've never had any of these people bother me. None of them ever have any impact on my life. So I have no interest in spending my money, giving my tax dollars to tell these people how to live their lives. But that's what we've been doing. Our bureaucrats coordinate with their bureaucrats. Our media coordinates with their media. If they don't have the money, we give them the money. If we take US aid as an example, we have $36 trillion of debt in the United States. Now, you guys don't understand how world finance works. Most of you just don't. I'll be honest, I didn't, because it's boring. Nobody wants to hear about finance and banking and the debt. It's all for old people, right? But there is a reason you're not interested in it. There is a reason you're told the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. I love biology, by the way. But that has never, ever been useful in my life. Learning about how finance works, yes, that has been useful. $36 trillion of debt means your country owes this money to somebody. It could be you if you bought your government's bonds, but usually it's to private banks like the central banks, the Federal Reserve. It's not federal. It's not, again, none of these people on the board of the Federal Reserve are elected. They're selected. And it's other countries. Now you would say, hold on. So you're saying I could go around giving people pieces of paper, promising them X% interest if they give me some money, and they would give me money? No, not to you, but to nations, because nations can back it up with what? Resources, defense, expansions, wars, and thirdly, and most importantly, your tax dollars. So basically, the governments that are $36 trillion in debt, which is only the United States right now, and all the other governments that follow this model, by the way, the UK is, I believe, in billions, hundreds of billions, if not trillions of pounds in debt, is going to a bunch of institutions, countries, and private bankers and asking them for money. Why? Another day, another topic. And who's going to be repaying that? You, your children, your grandchildren. Your taxes keep going up because these people own your labor. They own you. They own the work you do. And your government keeps borrowing because it's not their money they're spending. It's your money. But most of you are too exhausted, too stupid, let's be honest, or too carefree to actually understand how the world works. So Team America World Police, planned by people who were selected, not elected, implemented by people who were, again, selected, not elected, financed by you, who doesn't know you're doing the financing, and is making your life worse. All of this has come back home to roost in a debt that is $36 trillion. That's a number that is, for most people, so huge that it's insane. The average American, regardless of what you might see on your Instagram feed, does not make more than $30,000 to $50,000 a year before taxes. If you live in any of the major cities in the United States, you know how less that is. Now just think, right? If you make $3,000 a month and you pay 35% taxes, right? That's about $150,050 in taxes. Those taxes are going to all of this nonsense that you didn't vote for and you didn't even know you were paying for. Imagine if you had to pay only $200 in taxes. You had $850 to do with what you want. You could eat better, live better, sleep better, save better, actually get ahead in life, maybe buy that house you always wanted to. So your tax dollars from your labor and your work being spent on stuff that you didn't vote for, you weren't asked about, you didn't elect the people doing it, you didn't select them. And now the people that you have elected who are dismantling this are being vilified incessantly in the media. But who cares, right? Because now you have alternative ways of getting your information. But how long is this going to last? We will have specific examples next time. But you have to remember, this is a reaction. It took 65 years for the chickens to become so bad that the people had to burn down the entire chicken coop and say, you know what, we're going to burn it all down and start again. If after all of this, you still don't understand why your life sucks, then no one can help you at this point in time. You have to understand something, and this is specifically for the very young and the very old. Throughout my life, I have met many Americans, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, late 50s, who said, well, I'm a conservative now. And I always ask them, well, you're pretty much closer to death now than you were. So what were you for the majority of your life? I was a liberal. Great. So you basically contributed to the destruction of your own society for the majority of your young life when you had the energy and the willpower to do things. And now that you're old and your life sucks, you suddenly got the wisdom to be a conservative? Not ideal. For the young, understand this. We all think we're champions. We all think we know better than everybody else. We all think, everybody underestimates me, but I'm going to show them. That's great. That's a great attitude to have. Not a great attitude to have when you're given the responsibility of deciding who's running your society. Do some pieces of homework today, because what'll keep you sharp. If you don't understand what the world police is, number one, find out what the world police is. You'll go down a bunch of memes, use cartoons, use whatever you need to do to figure it out. Secondly, find out what a bureaucracy is. Understand this word, get familiar with it, because these people dictate your life. From the time you go to the DMV at 16 to get your driving license till the time you die and your death certificate is issued. Yes, the same unpleasant people that you do not like dictate your life. Find it out and find out how big it is. Thirdly, find out who the judiciary is. Not just the Supreme Court. It's a federal judiciary. This is more American, but you can extrapolate this to your nation, however you're set up. Find out who your judiciary is. How are your judges selected? What is the process? Who's got oversight over them? And are they in conflict with the people that you elected? Checks and balances. You have to understand. This is not a catchphrase which has been made to say that we're not going to let the will of the people stand. The checks and balances are not on the president. The checks and balances is on you. That what you want is not going to happen, but what unelected people want is going to happen. If you're in the EU, you know this. The EU roundly rejected the idea of joining into a political union. The referendums failed. The people didn't want a political union at all. You know what they did? They made it a treaty. They signed it. Do what you can now. Your vote matters in very few countries, because most of these people think that you're too stupid to make the decision on who should rule you. And most of you justify that decision by being ignorant. So ignorance is not an excuse. Find out who rules you, find out who you elect, find out who is selected, and find out who's checking whom. In a harmonious society, the executive, the judiciary, and the houses of governments are in harmony with each other. When the United States went to war with Britain for independence, we didn't have a Supreme Court vetoing the idea, like, oh, we veto it. We didn't have a Senate and Congress arguing against a president who was like, I don't feel like it. We had a unified body of people who had an idea and went for it. So, conflicts between the judiciary, the Senate, the Congress, or your upper house, lower house, House of Lords, whatever, and the president or prime minister are mostly not confrontational and are mostly easily worked out if everybody's on the same wavelength. If they're not, and you're seeing massive activism by these unelected people and bureaucrats, you're living through an actual takeover and war of your government and your society. I think that's enough for today, because if you can stay this long and understand these concepts, you're going to understand what's going to happen next time we take actual examples of world leaders talking about current events, which are very fascinating, by the way, and translating them for you to understand what they're actually saying. Remember, war is peace, peace is war, up is down, down is up, truth is lies, lies is truth. Until next time, keep it cool, keep it smart, and enjoy.